So today's video is going to focus on shoulder motion and the beginning of the wind-up. So today's video is going to go a little bit into anatomy of the shoulder, and it's going to focus on this 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock position. The first phase varies person to person, so we're going to focus specifically on the 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock portion of the wind-up today. Future videos will look at future parts of the wind-up, but today we're going to just do a little anatomy on this 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock portion and help you understand the anatomy and kinesiology a little bit better when describing that motion. So we focus on this phase right here to this phase right here. So once again, that 6 o'clock arm position to 3 o'clock arm position. So we're going to rewind and look at the shoulder itself, because today's mostly going to focus on the shoulder. So this is looking from the front, or looking through the person. You can see the shoulder blade and the humerus, or the shoulder. So these muscles all attach in those general areas. So we're going to focus on the beginning, on the infraspinatus. The infraspinatus is a rotator cuff muscle, and it's very active in the beginning phase of the wind-up. It's actually most active during this phase. So it's a shoulder stabilizer. It's a rotator cuff muscle. It's a posterior cuff muscle. You can see it here. It starts on the shoulder blade, in the middle of the shoulder blade, and it goes all the way to the humerus. So it's responsible, because of its attachments, origin and insertion, it's responsible for centralizing and stabilizing the glenohumeral joint, or the humerus. And now you can see this is the supraspinatus. It's also a rotator cuff muscle. It's supra because it's above the infraspinatus. It is also very active and responsible for stabilizing the shoulder during this phase. One of the most active muscles during this phase is also the pec major. And you can see it's very high level of the pec major. So the pec is a more common muscle. It's on the anterior shoulder. It attaches to the anterior humerus, and it is also on the chest wall. It's a very important muscle that is often overlooked and undertrained because people shy away from training the anterior shoulder. But it produces a lot of power, and it peaks in this phase, and it also peaks later on, producing power later in the softball windup. So the actual shoulder position you can see is extended, and then it moves to a flexed position in this phase of the windup. So it's going from extended or behind the body to flexed. So you can see part of the delt here in the posterior deltoid. They didn't look at the anterior deltoid, but the anterior deltoid is going to be one of the most active muscles in this phase of the windup. Specifically, the anterior deltoid, you can see there, is closely related to the pec major. So the anterior deltoid and the pec major are going to flex the shoulder. So when it's moving forward, it's going from extended to a flexed position. And the primary muscles for that are going to be the pec major and the anterior deltoid. If you were in the gym raising your shoulders up to this position with a dumbbell or performing a front raise, it's going to recruit the pec and the anterior deltoid at very high levels, which is why those muscles are very active. Another thing that occurs during this phase is scapular protraction. Scapular protraction is very important. You can see here, this is scapular protraction. It's the plus part of a push-up plus. So what the scapular protraction does is it assists with momentum generation, and it's going to allow the arm to be reached farther forward. So when she goes from this flexed to more flexed position, she's able to reach farther forward due to that scapular protraction. So in summary, of the 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock, there's three main things that occur. The shoulder goes from an extended to a flexed position and has high anterior shoulder activity. which is offset by that high posterior rotator cuff activity. So the infraspinatus and supraspinatus maintain that humeral stability and keep pulling it farther backwards as the shoulder moves farther forward. So it's going to centralize it. Scapular protraction also occurs to increase the reach farther forward. So those are some of the main muscle activity in the upper body during this phase of the wind-up.